So moving on from the equipment and the fleet, I'd like to talk a little bit about Station 9. I think that's something that we've been talking about for a long time. You talked about an underserved portion of San Angelo and why Station 9 is needed. So first of all, talk a little bit about why it's needed. Why there? We know San Angelo is always moving and expanding, but talk a little bit about Station 9 and why the location. And then I'll kind of ask you a couple questions on how we've gotten to where we're at right now and where are we going.
Okay. As you start planning for the future, you want to look at a needs assessment for the community. Mm-hmm. So I have a fire station map in my office that provides coverage zones for each fire station. And each one of these coverage zones is about a 3-mile circle. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the map, you step back and you look at the map.
I thought that was just like a painting in your office.
It's not a painting.
Is that what those circles are?
That's what those circles are. It does have a purpose.
I always wondered what those are.
See what you've learned.
If you step back,
I learned a lot on scene.
On scene,
for sure.
If you step back and look at that map, there's a glaring hole in the middle of it. So not in the middle of it, but down the southwest part of San Angelo. Mm-hmm. And 15 years ago, the population in that area was very small. But as we have expanded southwest, we've annexed some property out there, that need has increased dramatically. So in 2022, whenever the Insurance Service Organization office came in, they evaluated our fire department, our water infrastructure, and our dispatch system, and they gave us a superior rating of a 1. The consultant that looked at this identified that specific area as being underserved. Mm-hmm. Well, that area was already identified by the fire department as being underserved, but with limited population.
A lot of it has to do with response time, right?
Exactly.
I mean, so where our stations are and how long it takes them to get if there was an emergency in that area.
Right. So the NFPA recommends a 4-minute response time, where ISO has a different perspective on it. Their recommendation is there should not be any residential or commercial structure greater than 5 road miles from a given fire station, mm-hmm. and then on top of that, it should not be more than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant. Mm-hmm. A lot of the codes that we have in the city is to meet those standards. This neighborhood in particular that I'm speaking of, they had a hydrant infrastructure in place. Mm-hmm. But it's not or, it's and. 5 miles and within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. This neighborhood was just outside of that 5-mile area. And whenever you look at response times, it was 7 to 8 minute response time to this neighborhood. There's a need there. So then we started down the process. We've identified the need, now we need to do something about it. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. That section of town is currently being developed. Mm-hmm. And has been developed for a while. So the availability of land was a real challenge. Mm-hmm. There is available land out there, but a lot of people did not want to sell. Right. And we spent every bit of a year and a half just trying to find a suitable piece of property. There were other properties, but they were not where that fire station needed to be located. Right. We could purchase the land and put a station there, and then in 10 years, that station would need to be moved. Right. That is not the best interest of our city. Right. So that station is a 30 to a 50-year commitment. So we need to make sure that it not only serves our community today, mm-hmm. 10 years from now, it needs to be able to serve our community at least 50 years from now as the city expands and us forecasting where the city is going to the best of our ability.
So do we have the land?
We have the land.
Awesome.
So
I already knew the answer. I wanted you to be able to say it out loud.
So 2.5 years ago, I began this process of looking for a piece of property, and several properties I investigated and did some work on to purchase, and they fell through, and for different reasons. Ultimately, we landed on a piece of property. It is right off of a street called The Crossings, and it is at the corner of The Crossings and Ben Ficklin. The site is a little bit elevated. It is, once you get up to the elevation, it is flat. There is some site work to be done. The site is almost 3 acres, and it will absolutely accommodate a fire station equivalent to, if y'all are familiar with Station 5, 7, and 4, it will accommodate a station of at least that size, and I'm looking at adding an additional engine bay onto it for some of our special operations equipment to be parked. So
we've got the land.
You got the land.
Now we got to prepare the site and we got to build a fire station. Right?
So,
what goes into that?
No, slow down. We're not ready to build yet. So there's a lot to go into it before you ever break ground. First of all, you have to secure an architect, and we have to get building plans and site plans. And then once those site plans are developed, we can get a cost estimation. Let's not forget, everything takes money. Once I get a cost estimation, then we need to figure out how we are going to fund this fire station. The Assistance to Firefighter Grant Program is through FEMA. They do not have a grant that builds fire stations. They have a grant that will remodel but not build fire stations. Our emergency management, Jose Rivera,
yes,
emergency manager, he has got a lot of expertise in grant writing. We also have another individual on the department that has expressed a lot of interest and has been very successful in acquiring grants for our department.
Right.
Both of those are actively looking for a grant to pay for this station. August Pfluger has some congressional funding available that usually comes open in March. We were not able to apply for this grant last year because one of the parameters of the grant is you have to own the property before you can apply for it.
Right.
It is our intention to go full force into this grant this next year for the discretionary funds, and hopefully we're successful. If we get a portion of it funded, if we get some of it funded, or none of it funded, none would be terrible. 100% funded is a home run.
Right.
So that's what I'm shooting for. And any grant that we receive as an organization, again, is a relief of tax burden for our citizens. So we actively pursue any grant that we can go after, and this is a big one that we're hoping to get.
What about, and I know this is a hard thing to forecast, but timeline, realistic. I mean, I know a lot of that has to do with funding and what becomes available, but, what's your goal? What is your strategic plan? For
ISO kind of set that timeline for me. So 2.5 years ago when they came in 2022, they are on a 5-year rotation. They identified this need, and in the final report, they mentioned that if we do not have a 9th fire station when they come back for reassessment, that we will drop to a classification of a 2. San Angelo's never regressed in classification, so there's my motivation factor to get it done. We've got about 2.5 years left, and it is not reasonable to think that we will be finished in 2.5 years, but we have to begin the process before ISO is scheduled to come back. Once we break ground, a reasonable timeline from groundbreaking is about 2 years. So, clock's ticking.
Here we go.
Clock's ticking.
Obviously, if we're adding a station, that also means we're going to have to add people
And equipment.
And equipment, right? If you're going to add a fire station, you got to have people, you got to have firefighters in there, and you also got to have fire trucks to drive, right? So I mean, I know that's part of that process, and I know that, again, we could do a whole show just on this alone, but just talk a little bit about that. Obviously, not only are you working actively, get the land, build the station, but then what comes after that as well.
So forecasting the needed personnel to increase our staffing. Obviously, with an additional engine company, we have 3 shifts, so you're going to have personnel for the engine company on all 3 shifts. You're also going to have, I talked a little bit about our EMS and how we are approaching that threshold for adding an additional ambulance. With the addition of this 9th fire station, the timeline is going to line up almost exactly to add the 7th First Out ambulance. So those personnel, 2 personnel on the ambulance, and we have 3 shifts there. Now, what are we doing to possibly offset the cost of these new personnel? FEMA does have a grant. It's called a
Safer grant.
SAFER grant. What's it?
Too many grants. You got too many acronyms in your head.
Yes.
Safer grant.
So it's
A lot of
SAFER grant.
acronyms.
And the easy version of what the SAFER grant is basically it pays for 100% of your personnel the first year, and each year after that it drops off 25%.
We've been fortunate enough to receive that in the past.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. I can't remember what year that was, but I know we were able to add some personnel.
2018, 19.
2018, we were successful being awarded the SAFER grant. The police department has received a SAFER grant. Our intention is to Once funding is secured for the station, then I will proceed forward with applying for the SAFER grant to offset the cost of these personnel. And also talking about an addition of a 9th frontline fire engine.
Right.
And we've already talked about how expensive those are.
Yep.
And a 7th first out ambulance. So there's a lot of funding to be figured out.
I wanted to get. I know that again, getting to hear the progression of Station 9. When you say new station, everybody, including our personnel, man, that's exciting, right? New fire station, man, it is a. I know how much work it is, and I just wanted you to be able to get to speak to how much goes into a project like that. But that is something exciting for our citizens and for our personnel that's coming.